Sorry that, can I go back, please? There you go. Penn Station's demise was a call to arms in defense of our heritage, our city, and our humanity. The new Penn Station, the one that we currently have, illustrated a seismic shift from optimism to pessimism, from urban to the suburban, from the train to the car, and from the public to the private. But despite the shift, train travel remains the primary mode of arrival in Manhattan. It remains vital and civic in nature, and the response must be equally civic and impressive in nature. Unlike arrival by car, bus, and airplane, the train deposits visitors in the heart of the city, in singular locations that act as definitive gateways. The new Penn Station must be symbolic but functional, civic and urban simultaneously. It must be both front door and living room, drawing in adjacent uses to be a vibrant resident of the city. In its role as gateway, it provides the most natural link between the future commercial and cultural districts of Hudson Yards, the Chelsea Arts District, the Far West Side commercial district with central Manhattan. Our work on the High Line and the Culture Shed and its attached residential tower have made us sensitive to the varied demands and opportunities of Far West Manhattan, which embodies a quixotic mix of cultural, residential, commercial, leisure, and outdoor uses, all of which should find representation in the new Penn Station. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Josh Serafman, our collaborator, to talk more about the urban opportunities.
Thank you, Charles. We've had the interesting assignment from Liz and Charles of finding how is this feasible. The key, if I can find it, the key lies in value, in the value that Penn Station creates, civic value, private value, as a gateway, as the gateway to the massive expansion to the west, as the connection to Grand Central, as John and Hugh so eloquently said, which is a smaller distance than it used to be, as the gateway to the New York City, the midtown of the next century, as the gateway to New York City's global competitive position. As Roger said, unlike Grand Central, which created Park Avenue and created opportunities to follow, Brookfield, related, people are starting to build on the west side. Pretty soon, they're going to be in desperate need of the anchor that Penn Station can play. Unlocking this value requires a series of extraordinarily complicated steps. Achieving this will probably surpass only the rebuilding of the World Trade Center in complexity, but it is doable. We start with giving MSG what it needs. I think we've learned recently from Barclays that an arena needs transit. It wants transit, and in fact, it enhances transit and the areas around it. Currently, while Penn Station suffers, so does MSG. First, we shift it to the Farley Building, to the back of the Farley Building, giving it all of the amenities that it needs, all the transit access that it needs, allowing it to be accessible. And in fact, all of this should take sufficient time that MSG will be able to realize some value and return on the investment that it's made currently to upgrade that facility. Secondly, we talk about development rights. While we can all aim big, there's actually lots of assets to use here. There's development rights that exist. Colleagues at Vornado will see that their building's no longer here. In fact, some of that value needs to, in fact, assist in the relocation of existing commercial space. Some of that value needs to contribute to allowing MSG to realize its new form. And some of that value can travel, whether it's to the district around it. There are extensive opportunities for additional use of density strategically. Maybe there's opportunities to create even more density than currently exists that could be used even more strategically. Maybe air rights created here are the future of 6th Avenue. We're all talking about Midtown East. We're not yet talking about the next generation of the 6th Avenue commercial corridor. Maybe there's air rights on a sliding price scale that can travel to business districts throughout the city. Perhaps Penn Station's role as a civic anchor can in fact have a much broader citywide impact than just the immediate district. This also requires extraordinary collaboration from the rail lines. Everybody's working on Band-Aid solutions, whether it's Amtrak in Moynihan, whether it's the new Penn Vision, whether it's Gateway. All of those together need to create one place that allows people to travel throughout the city from that. One place that creates a single station, a single experience for all of the people that John spoke about and the millions more. Ultimately, this requires, catch up to my slides. Ultimately, this requires the creation of a district around it that can allow, sorry, this doesn't behave, that can allow the Garden and Penn Station to function to enhance capacity. You'll notice we've closed streets around that, allow throughway across the west side. But the most important piece is how this gets driven. And this is, in fact, the responsibility to create an extraordinary partnership at all levels of government, to create new financing mechanisms, to create the groundwork to create a sense of place that Liz will now speak about.
I can talk a little bit about the attributes of this space. Now, visionary notions of the 20th century future, the 20th century city of the future, featured mobility as a key. Grand Central Station made good on that vision, connecting flows of trains, metro, car, and pedestrians in this very tight, intricate sectional matrix. And unlike the fate of Penn Station before the preservation laws, Grand Central Terminal was mercifully spared the wrecking ball, and the first building saved under the Landmarks Conservancy Act. MAS is now taking a kind of guardian position in the city's history and also playing a role in advocacy, so thank you for this opportunity. Today, the civic qualities of Penn Station seem still very much alive. Of course, the interior and the difference of the interior of the waiting room and actually the shed really are very, very striking in terms of animation and activity. Trains are the most sustainable and green form of transportation, and they're enjoying a renaissance everywhere where there's a responsible government in charge. The architecture of the new train station that supports the infrastructure typically adheres to a traditional notion of monumentality. The grandeur and the soaring voided space of the Beaux-Arts building and the huge space seems to us out of touch with the cultural politics of our time. Yet there's something compelling about the celebration of the space of travel, and it needs translation. How can we reimagine the train station of tomorrow? What is a 21st century approach to monumentality? Rather than unoccupied symbolic space, we propose an exuberant space that's dense with heterogeneous mix of programs for multiple intersecting populations and in use around the clock. The space would be porous to the city and porous to the sky. There are stations around the world that engage in multiple activities beyond that of transport, like this famous restaurant in Paris, La Train Bleue, and in Spain, the wonderful garden and the new transit hub. In Turkey, a traditional performance in the space. And Grand Central itself is very lively with a market, restaurants, sports, exhibition space, and so forth. The new Penn Station that we envision will aggregate many diverse programs. For the traveler, the city will begin when the train pulls into the station, the gateway coming up out of the ground. No longer just a symbolic gateway, the new station will be a city within a city. And it will feed not only transient populations, but the local population. And it will reflect the hybridity of contemporary urban life. As a response to the population peaks of rush hour and the relative deadness of the in-between time, the new Penn Station will be alive 24/7, reflecting New York's vital restlessness, as well as the cycles of the global economy and the efficiencies of time sharing in a city where real estate prices are very steep. So the notion of train system running like clockwork attests to the importance of the social clockwork, the social contract of time in regards to travel. Time is the main organizing principle for the new station. The station that we're imagining is conceived like a tree. From street level, the circulation network branches downward like the root system of the tree to feed the subways, track platforms that further diverge into the distant geographies. The circulation network also branches upward from the street like tree limbs to connect a range of distributed programs across 8 levels. The programs are organized in horizontal layers of time in a kind of gradient of decelerating speeds from the tracks to the roof. So from the high-speed whoosh of the trains at the platform level and concourse mezzanine to the frenetic flow of pedestrians at street level, one level up matching the alertly hovering pace of commuters at the mezzanine, and the leisurely meandering of contemporary flaneurs at mid-levels, and the slowness and restfulness at the upper levels that we imagine. The new Penn Station will be a large sponge-like mass, aerated in every direction, to bring light down into the station, into the depths of the platforms. So you can find fast food, medium food, and slow food. Wellness can be as quick as a 15-minute massage or as slow as a three-day spa retreat. And air pockets bring light into the open weave of programs. The new station would be a microcosm of the city, combining the density of a high-rise laterally, the pulse of the street, the cultural offerings of the city center, and the casualness of a city park. For the New York City resident, the train station would be a destination in itself. And these are just a couple of small thoughts about programs and the intersection of odd things that really don't belong together but are very urban. So the correlation of time and space is critical in a station, and clocks are central in most stations, as are display boards. In the future, the need for ticketing and collective waiting will be replaced by personal mobile devices. The future train station will be characterized by the absence of hardware. It will be so efficient that waiting may be a thing of the past, but we want to retrieve the socialness of waiting in a new way. As an antidote to a city where time equals money, the new Penn Station introduces waiting as a virtue. The station provides a space of the in-between, nourished by a spectrum of activities and durations that feed the brain, the body, and the soul. And we're proposing here that space is measured as the time in between arrival and departure, here on your personal device. The central brain of the system will curate personal wait times into itineraries. So if you're going to Trenton, you're on a 25-minute leash if your train leaves at whatever time, and passengers with more time can move further from the departing gate on this electronic leash that works in plan and also in section. So there are other kind of thoughts about, oh yes, and here are all the places you can go. And architecture and waiting can be conceived throughout architecturally as durations related to activities, from 5 minutes to 3 hours. Technologies will also have a refined presence in space. A floor display might map incoming and outgoing trains in analog form, like a miniature X-ray. Dashboard webcams mounted onto fronts of trains could display real-time views of trains converging onto Penn Station or diverging from it, geographically distributed all over the country. Information, whether be it news, public service announcements, orientation, and advertisements, would be integrated seamlessly into building surfaces. But a human will still matter. We imagine that, that at street level, rather than clogging the ground level with stuff, roaming vendors could make grab and go even faster. And a concierge could also provide an array of services, from checking in bags, booking a hotel room or spa treatment, to ordering your grocery shopping so it's ready at your destination stop. And these are just some views. This is from street level, very dynamic. You could see up and down, very perforated. This is from the track level. So when you come, when you get off your train, you really enter the city and its dynamism. A view from 9th Avenue. So the building is stranded as it moves east and west along the tracks, and a view someplace from the middle where you could see this dense array of very, very different, diverse activities. And the rooftop, a park. We imagine this as a beacon, very active all day, all night. So in closing, we basically put a wrecking ball to the site, intelligently reorganize the values and the location of Madison Square Garden. We build a new civic center. That's contiguous with the city and contiguous with light and air. That comes into a kind of civic blend. Thank you.
Up next, please welcome Shock to the stage.
Good morning. I'm Vishan Chakrabarty. My partner is Greg Pasquarelli, Chris Sharples from Shop Architects. We are but a small subset of a small army of people who've been working on this. Not just for this exercise, but really over the course of the last decade. And this is an extraordinarily serious problem and undertaking, and we've tried to take it in a commensurately serious way. We have not worked alone. We, in addition to getting the extraordinary leadership of the Municipal Art Society and Vincipola, have worked with Bureau Happold, structural and mechanical engineers, Weidlinger on blast and security issues, which we think are paramount here, as well as James Sanders, very well-known architect, historian, and who really worked as a consultant with us on this. Mies van der Rohe said that architecture must be of its epoch. And as we think about that, we think perhaps of no other firm than McKimmon & White in terms of a firm being of its epoch. And they have very much, for us, formed a touchstone. And when they thought about their epoch and the future of New York City and the entrance to New York City, McKim wrote to a friend that the scale is Roman and will have to be sustained in terms of the scale of the new Penn Station. And they thought about this not through nostalgia, but actually through the world of technology. and built an extraordinary progressive wonder for a century of progress for New York City that did not last a century. Half a century later, it was torn down and very ingloriously replaced. Now, all of us can talk about the architectural problems of Penn Station, but I would ask that we actually step away from that for a moment and talk about the very, very critical functional problems of Penn Station. If we are to be of our epoch in a world of climate change, of terrorism, of economic prosperity that is uneven, then we have to look at this station as a kind of really the fountainhead of all of those problems come together. There is an extraordinary lack of safety. I don't mean to be alarmist about it, but the station was built for 120,000 people a day. It processes 650,000 people a day. The platforms are narrow. The egress corridors are insufficient. I travel through the station with small children. I do not linger there. There is a tremendous lack of capacity. There is insufficient platform space. There's insufficient waiting space. And there is an extraordinary lack of light and air and a sense of disorientation, so one cannot find the city when one arrives because of what is placed above it. That has come together to create a district that people want to get out of as soon as they can. And of course, why wouldn't they? It is the hole in the donut. It is the poor step cousin of Midtown. When you think about how we have transformed this city, from Bryant Park to Columbus Circle to Times Square, and then look at this misery of an area. We worked for years to think about the High Line and Hudson Yards, which others have spoken about, and yet here we have some very, do we have, is this here? No. We have the garden and its structure looming, very old office structures, an empty warehouse of a landmark, a very large building that blockades our way into the west side, and a mail facility here that disconnects what is the wonder and the vibrance of the New Chelsea from this rather miserable neighborhood. So how to begin? We're proposing to move the Madison Square Garden facility to the Morgan Postal Facility for a number of reasons. Yes, a number of our colleagues here have talked about different sites, but this site we think is perfect. It is assembled, it's under one ownership. That ownership is by the government. That ownership is for a piece of function that we think is waning in our world, which is snail mail. And most critically, of any of the sites we've talked about, this site can not only accommodate a new arena, it can accommodate all of the air rights, some 5.5 million square feet that float above that site. So it is one-stop shopping in terms of moving Madison Square Garden, and that is the absolute linchpin to this entire exercise. Next, we, like others, have said, well, maybe our friends from Vornado could think about a slightly different place for their office building and have proposed a very significant new development to replace 2 Penn Plaza. As others have mentioned, Amtrak, working with Senator Schumer and Senator Lautenberg, are working on a new gateway tunnel that will bring new track capacity into the block just south of Penn Station, the block known as Block 780. And we have looked at the fact that both that block and the block that is due west of it essentially need to be condemned in order to do much of this, and that we believe that a lot of the air rights from those blocks can go into this kind of no man's land that exists to the south and to the east of the station, much of which is a manufacturing zone. And so we think through those actions, we can reverse the way New Yorkers and people around the world think about this district as not a place to flee, but a destination. And that destination could be connected with a new extension of the High Line that connects the new Madison Square Garden through a new park that we call Gateway Park to a new Penn Station that is 3 blocks long and connects all the way over to yet another park that creates a green necklace across all of the west side, as well as a yellow circulation route that is a network of public spaces that one moves through as one moves through this new district. That district includes, again, the new arena, a new theater that's just to the north of it, an extension of the High Line, and the High Line really comes and dives into that new park because the grades meet between the High Line and the city. a new 3-block station that my colleague Chris will explain in a minute, the new Gotham Tower, which you see in the model, which is the replacement of 2 Penn Plaza, and Gotham Park. The idea, just as we did with the High Line, is to take the air rights from this area, transfer them out, and in so doing, create an urban bowl with a center that is really about the train stations, the parks, and with density that comes around that in transit-oriented development, New York style. The center of that bowl is a new train station that my colleague Chris will explain.
Right.
That's forward, that's the...
Got it, got it. So just to give you a sense of scale, we're looking at 3 city blocks here. You can comfortably sit Lincoln Center inside it, and rivals, in a way, the scale of train centers across the globe. So in a way, to really appreciate and understand, you have to sort of start from the tracks and work your way up. So we looked at placing the North Hall would be Long Island Railroad, the Central Hall would be the Amtrak and high-speed rail, and New Jersey Transit in the south, with Moynihan taking on the airports. What's great about this is you move up to the lower concourse, you pass directly into the subways along 8th and 7th Avenue. Then taking you up to the main concourse, really trying to develop that whole idea of civic urbanism where we actually ring the whole station with commercial activity, shops, restaurants, sort of, as Liz was talking about, really creating a sense of place, a real sense of density, but also creating a sense of hierarchy for the station, for the main halls, and then opening out to the elevation of Moynihan and the park. And this would be a view as you're coming in along the main concourse. This would be on axis with 32nd Street. You're looking into the main hall. And this would be one of the south halls, where very different, more vertical canyon with the 2 layers of retail above. On top of that, a garden promenade that rings the whole station with a light concrete shell, very porous to draw on the sort of the magical daylight that we saw in the McKim-Mead-White original Penn Station. And really to create that sort of light and airy space, that really civic space that this area really deserves. And at the same time, at the promenade, at the landscape level, allowing that natural ventilation, the light, and even the acoustical way that we manage it with the modulated, the sort of 5th facade of the roof to sort of really handle all these sort of environmental constraints that the station would be subject to.
So, one of the critical things is you can't expand the size of the platforms, and it's really, as everyone knows, it's really tight down there and it's tough. But by rethinking the structural system, a lot of the columns could be moved into the center of the tracks, which then is obviously a good strategy for protecting the station. We could remove these areas so that it's much wider, and your access up to the upper level is increased, along with your views and views of the train board as you're both on the platform and up in the hall. We could have a bollard system around that allows the perimeter to be protected, and then also create the facade of the building so it is also protected, and would have much wider sidewalks all the way around in plazas, because we all know what it's like to walk through those streets and how everyone sort of scuttles down 7th Avenue or 8th Avenue in the backups, with drop-off areas when you're coming from the south on 30th Street and when you're coming from the north on 33rd. Also then, where the High Line would then come in and meet the level of the park, that allows for all the servicing and trucks and transportation to be off-site and not under the station, which is one of the critical things for protecting it. Again, this kind of connection of the streets that would go right through the station so that it doesn't block it off and it just becomes a natural part of the way one moves through the city, both north, south, and east, west. And then a very direct connection that would bring you into the Gateway Park and to the garden to the west, and then onto the High Line and through West Chelsea and all the way down to the Meatpacking District. So here you can see the view looking out towards 8th Avenue. Here you see the new relocated garden with its development rights built out above. Here you see Moynihan Station, 8th Avenue, and you're up on the upper level looking through this glass facade with the very wide and generous sidewalk and the kind of permeability of the streets moving right through the station itself. Here's a view from what we were calling Gateway Park. By putting the park in front of Moynihan, it really makes it a civic gesture, makes this landmark stand out. We could imagine some kind of fantastic art. If we can afford the Jeff Koons here, that would be fantastic. And then you could see the large tower, which you see in the model, which would take a lot of the development rights from the station itself and move it across 7th Avenue. And so then one of the critical things, one of the differences between the Garden and Barclays is the accessibility and the location of the playing floor. The floor is sunken in Barclays. It's incredibly permeable. There's interaction between being on the concourses and permeability with the whole facade. It's not the dead object box. And by placing the Garden in this location, you could get all your servicing off of 10th Avenue. The High Line would come in right at this plaza level. The playing floor would be at ground, so you could drive the trucks directly on. It would make it incredibly more efficient, more spacious, with all the backup spaces that a modern sports arena needs. And then what that might look like. So here you are coming on the High Line, walking due east towards the Empire State Building and the new tower. Here would be the Cultural Building to the north. And the Garden would have this incredible open plaza at the level of the High Line, which then by the time it gets to 9th Avenue is ground level. And you could connect under Gateway Park directly into the Garden without even going outside for those cold months of basketball and hockey season.
So there you see the overall area. You understand that that's Hudson Yards, for which we've already talked a lot, that's already been rezoned. But you understand that this district is extraordinarily valuable despite what it feels like today. And that the recreation of this station and the creation of this parkland infrastructure would completely take over in terms of helping to pay for all this. But I think we wanted to close with just an understanding of, well, how do we get here? We've worked at this for years and years, over a decade actually. How do we get here? The first is we're calling for the formation of a Gateway Task Force